The first thing we would do is our land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledgement that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the district of Spaganagity, and the ancestral unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. First thing I'll be looking for is the approval agenda of all subcommittees.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Looking for the approval of minutes of September 21st, 2021. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? We'll now move on to new employee introductions. We'll start with the Director for Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, one new employee in the department this month. Jillian Stymas is joining us from the private sector, where she was a GIS technician with Eagle GIS, and we certainly need her with how busy we are. She's helping out already on not just the mapping stuff, but also with development control. So there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome, Jillian. The CAO will introduce our next 4 new employees and new designations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is a little bit different than what we've done in the past. As employees have been promoted in the organization, we haven't come back to council and recognized them at that point. So what we'd like to start doing is just bringing to committee when employees have changed roles, and we have 4 folks who have changed roles in the last few months, so we wanted to acknowledge that today. So Amy Pine has moved into a role of Manager of Real Estate and Corporate Projects, so she'll be overseeing the asset management project that I've been speaking with you about in the last budget or two. We also have Jenna Robar, who was at the front desk. You would have known Jenna from the receptionist position. She's moved into the tax administrator position, so she was moved into that position in July this year, and we're very excited for her to help move the finance department forward on the tax and water and administrative side for that. Tippy Scott was our planning and development technician. She was moved into the position of geomatics coordinator. So she will handle all of your GIS systems, maintenance and whatnot, and we're very proud to have her in that role as well. Over at the Aquatic Center, we had Jenna McCachran, who was previously the aquatic supervisor. She was promoted recently into the role of aquatics coordinator. So her role over there is really to manage the day-to-day of the aquatic facility, and we're very fortunate that she's agreed to stay as part of our team and work with us on that role. So from my point of view, I'm glad to see that we have some succession planning that's working. We're getting folks into new roles in the organization and providing them with opportunities in the organization that they can really help grow their careers with. So I'd like to acknowledge all of those employees today.
Thank you, and congratulations to them all for their promotions and position changes. Next, we're going to get into the visit from our Member of Parliament, our MLAs, and we'll talk about council discussion and share priorities. First, I'd like to introduce Cody Blois, the Member of Parliament for Kings Hants. We have John McDonald, the MLA for Hants East. Melissa Shee Richard, the MLA for Hants West. Brad Johns, the MLA for Sackville-Uniacke. And in the gallery, we have Councillor-elect Walter Tingley, who will be representing Lance at a later date. So first, we're going to start off. I'm going to turn it over to the warden. She has some opening remarks for our guests. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. Just like to welcome our distinguished guests to our council meeting today. It is always appreciated when we have an opportunity to meet with the elected officials of other levels of government who represent the same people that we do, and the opportunity to discuss shared priorities and needs and ways that we can all work together is it's always a good thing. And I'm very happy that we have the opportunity this morning. what we will be doing is giving each person approximately 10 minutes to, speak and address council with anything they're interested in. Then we'll turn it over to the CAO to guide us through the discussion at the end around the shared priorities. We do have a new strategic plan, and I think you'll find that a lot of our priorities relate very much so back to that. And there will certainly be, hopefully, we'll have time at the end for councillors to ask any pertinent or specific questions on the discussion that they have interest in. So without taking up any more time, welcome folks, and I will turn it back over to the chair to start the discussion.
First, we'll let our Member of Parliament, Cody Blois, go. Cody, thank you for showing up. For coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great to see all of council and, of course, staff. Most of you, I think, would know me. I'm Cody Blois, the Member of Parliament here in Kings Hants. I've had the privilege of serving for the past 2 years, since October of 2019. And it's amazing. Both time goes by very quickly in 2 years, and yet it seems like it's been much longer than that, particularly with the pandemic as well. I probably won't take all 10 minutes because I'm really interested in actually hearing from you. I did have the opportunity in passing to speak with the warden about some of the priorities that I know that are being discussed at council. But this is a growing municipality. And when I look around, whether it be here in the corridor, Mount Uniacke, or even on the shore, and in the areas central to East Hants, housing and the amount of interest in people wanting to live in this community, this municipality, is significant. I remember being in Maitland 2 years ago. There was about 10 properties, and the owners of those properties were concerned about whether or not they would ever actually be able to sell their homes. I'd have to go on and check the real estate right now, but I don't think there's any available properties right now on the 215, which I think really speaks to the fact that there's been significant uptake. So I think for me as a Member of Parliament, the focus has to be on the infrastructure to support the growing communities. We've seen that both in my predecessor and Scott Bryson with some of the investments on the interchange, on the aquatic center. I know that there's going to be upcoming opportunities around infrastructure development, particularly with the development cycles that are being seen, whether or not that's wastewater, whether or not that's other recreational infrastructure to support the residents that are coming here. I think those are going to be opportunities for us to partner on. Was very pleased to see in the last, I think it was last year, in 2020, that we had the Shubenacadie wastewater project. I know that was something that council had prioritized for quite some time, and that's going to open up opportunities for development on the other end of the municipality. A couple programs that I would highlight for you that I think are going to have a lot of significance in the municipality is the Community Revitalization Fund. So I serve as the chair of the Rural Caucus at the federal level for our Liberal Party. We have about 30 members in our party that identify in rural ridings across the country. At the height of the pandemic, as you can appreciate, many of our communities are driven on nonprofit organizations, volunteer organizations that help create a sense of community and bring people together. Those pancake breakfasts, bean suppers, activities were not happening. So through ACOA as the administrative agent, the Community Revitalizations Fund is a series of smaller grants. I know this council, for example, has approved funding to support the application under that for the Shubenacadie Hall grounds. More to say on that soon. We do have an ACOA minister now, Jeanette Pettipas-Taylor, my colleague from Moncton. But I'm more than willing to share with the warden and perhaps CAO Ramsey the full list of the projects that are going to be going out. I know that we've got good applications from smaller communities right up to, of course, the one in Shubenacadie and larger projects that are at play. Tourism development on the shore, I don't have the numbers and I'd be happy to take them from staff, but I know certainly before the pandemic, Burnt Coat Head Park was being a significant draw to bring people from truly around the world. And I think there's an opportunity to build on that success. We were able to get a small project done in Walton around the fire hall for that community, and I think Councillor Green could speak to this. that is their community center in that small community. We were able to make that happen. I think there's opportunities to build a second bridge if council was interested and with the province and ACOA on the existing where the lighthouse sits. That would be something of interest for me to try to help develop with you if that's of interest to council. You will know also that we were able to make some small gas tax fund changes. I just mentioned, of course, the Walton Fire Hall, but whether or not it's Maitland, whether or not it's Kennecook, Nine Mile River, Lance, otherwise, these are really important to our community. And for the longest time, the gas tax funds were never able to be used for fire hall infrastructure. Under the leadership of the Rural Caucus, we were able to make that change, which is going to be, I think, really positive. It still is up to the discretion of the municipal councils. I know that it's not going to be able to be used in all circumstances, but I do think that that's a tool that can be used, with the appropriate measure on recommendations from staff and the administration. Finally, I would just simply say two other things. The childcare agreement, you saw Alberta signed on, Nova Scotia had signed on just prior to the election in August. That's going to be extremely important. We have a number of private operators and nonprofit operators here in East Hants that it's going to help bring down the costs for parents, especially those that are working. That's going to be huge to support their return to the workplace and I think support affordable communities in this area. I had a good conversation with Carmi and Florence and Shelley at Swings the other day about how that's going to help support them. So more to say on that. I know the province is working on a bit more of the intricate details on that side. Rails to trails. I know that I believe that this council has a priority around the DAR line from the Maitland area towards Windsor. Councillors from Mount Uniacke have highlighted to me, and of course the Uniacke Trails Association, which is no stranger to this council or this municipality, certainly took to the Utility and Review Board the need to take away the railway permit that exists on the rails to trails piece. I think that's something I'm hoping that the provincial government will move on. Ultimately, it's the discretion of the Minister of Transport. I believe it's Public Works now to be able to remove that permit. I know that's a conversation I've had with Melissa in relation to the opportunities that creates for East Hants, West Hants, and indeed many of the municipalities in Kings County as well. So it's something that I'm willing to help support in my role as an MP. If we're able to trigger that process, ultimately it would allow other railways to come in and operate an active railway. I think that's probably quite unlikely at this point, but then it would trigger a sale process. Federal, provincial, municipal governments would have the ability to be able to help buy that infrastructure and support it for the development of our communities. I know this is particularly important for ATV clubs and rural communities as well. Finally, what I would say to you on other priorities, I look at rural broadband. We are moving towards our goal of having 95% connection across the country. This is at the federal level by 2026. Develop Nova Scotia at the provincial level has taken a pretty strong leadership role in moving the yardsticks in the right direction. I know that there's still challenges, but that's something as an MP that I'm aware of. And last is, and I've highlighted this to the warden, I do think there's an opportunity, particularly with the growth cycle with Armco and with, they're escaping me right now, but the Newfoundland Development Company, right in behind actually where I'm at in Turner James, Lance Recreation. There's a 30-acre parcel of land there. I think that's something that if you were to engage Lance Rec, they are willing to want to try to move that parcel into a way that the municipality could support recreation development for a community that is rapidly growing. So I'm in support of those concepts and happy to take questions or have dialogue with council when we get to that portion. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. Next, no stranger around here, the MLA for Hants East, John McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, although it's strange being down here. I don't think
You're
you've
on
had
the
to sit here
clock, John.
before. Yeah, thanks, Councillor Mitchell. So I'm obviously the MLA for Hants East. Hants East was split into 3 ridings, that's why there's 3 MLAs here. It's been an interesting process compared to how municipal works, considering after the election, it's straight into the House. I've had conversations with the warden and the CAO and a couple of councillors on other priorities that I see them in this document. I see the budget coming up next year in the spring, looking at how we can actually help municipalities and not be downloading unless in all honesty, there's something with it. It's been too many years of downloading services and say, just do this and we're giving you nothing. And I'll be working with, I know that the MOU is now under review to figure out what the municipality is actually obligated and how the province is going to work with it. And I've had conversations with the minister and the SA on, I'd like some idea on how that's going to change. Consider 9 years around this table, many times it's been, yeah, here's what you're doing, and then no consultation. I would agree with the MP, with the growth going on, we've got to look 20 years down, 30 years down. Looking 5 and 10 years isn't going to work. And I look forward to working with the MP and my other MLAs on all of Hanseys. So if for one reason you need to get a hold of one of us, I'm sure, contact any one of us. We don't get into turf wars the same as municipality councillors didn't. So if you happen to see one of them and you've got a concern here, just ask them. They'll then yell at me why I didn't get back to you. My office is, I took over the previous MLA's office in Enfield. It is staffed. Jenna Fraser's my CA, and I think I've emailed everybody the number for council. The warden's nodding, and I'm thinking maybe I didn't. So I'll make sure that does go out, that all councillors have the email and phone number for it. The hours haven't changed. So any resident has a concern, feel free to reach out. Any councillor have any concerns, feel free to reach out. And as always, I don't like having too much time, so I'll leave it at that and look for your guys' questions. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Next, the MLA for Hants West, Melissa Sheehy. Is it Richard or Richard?
It is, very good. So John's my cabinet mate too in legislature. We get to sit by each other, so he's a wealth of information, this man. Teaches me lots, so I'm lucky to have him. Again, thank you for inviting us here today. I think it's really important, especially since I just inherited 500 of your residents this last election, which feel like they're lost in a bit of never land and not sure quite where they fit in. And I am trying and want to work with you guys very closely to make sure that they feel that their voices are heard and just as important as anyone further down in my riding. I do have a meeting with the Premier coming up on the 24th to discuss in detail the Rails to Trails project. I have affixed myself. I'm going to be adding Brett Johns and MLA Craig and MLA you, the other John, MLA this other John. So we're all going to come together on that. I think that's very important for the economy. It makes a lot of sense. We can get a lot of active transportation going through there. We can. It's good for the environment. There's nothing that should forbid us from trying to make that be more usable for all of us, because it's going to connect a lot of more communities in a totally different way. So it's a big priority for me. I am brand new, so I welcome any questions, and I may need a little bit of time to get back to you, but I also have taken over the old MLA's office, which is on 58 Garish. I can leave a card behind. I have a CA working for me. She's doing fantastic work, but there's lots to learn, and I would like to know what other ways I can help with that area that I represent. Fairly new with them, but I did try to get out there and welcome them. I sent a letter when I found out from Elections Nova Scotia that they would be part of my riding. So I think it's great that we're having a roundtable discussion, and if there's anything else that I can do at all, I read through this last night, and I love your long-term goals and what you're setting up for this growing community, because our whole province is a place that people want to live in, and as Cody mentioned also, our internet's an issue, so the province is going to work hard as well as lean on him more to get this going, and we are looking at getting infrastructure in place, that there would be a grant, hopefully will be finalized in the new year, to have the Starlink boxes, that we may do some kind of a provincial grant for people that are missing out on the internet, so then they would pay for the service and we would have a grant to help them get started with the device, so that it's a temporary fix, maybe a little faster than rolling out the high speed in all of these rural communities, because we're finding there's sometimes these glitches of 15 or 20 homes that for some reason or not, Bell can't get to. So I know that they're in conversations with Eastlink to see what they can provide, the cost. So everybody's working collaboratively on that. So hopefully we can keep rolling it out and getting people hooked up, because that's what we need, people that can service the internet, that they can work from home, because that's the lifestyle a lot of people are looking for. So thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Brad Johns for Sackville Uniac.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for saving the best for last. For those that aren't familiar with me, my name's Brad Johns. I'm former councillor with HRM, first elected in 2000 and re-elected 4 times after that. Became the MLA for Sackville Beaver Bank in the last provincial election, and this time had the honor of picking up Mount Uniac as well. Currently, I am the Minister of Justice as well as the Attorney General for the province as well, so I certainly welcome the opportunity to be here. I do want to say it was interesting when the election was going on, many of the doors that I knocked on. I had previously lived in Mount Uniac for about 10 years up on Coxcomb Lake. I had a place up there as well as in Upper Sackville. And when I was knocking on the doors, the one thing I heard from a lot of residents were how upset they were that that our area had been split up into 3 different MLAs. And one of the things I mentioned to numerous residents, and I'll offer to councils, I think it's probably one of the better opportunities that you've had, because instead of having one voice in that area, you now have 3 strong voices. And so hopefully with 3 of us that are currently in government, we'll have an opportunity to work well with the municipality to get some things for East Hanson areas up here. Similar to my colleagues at the table, I think the Rails for Trails thing is something I've heard from a number of residents. It's certainly a priority for me. I had an opportunity to meet with Councillors Perry and Musa already to have a brief discussion with that, and anything that I can do at the provincial level to help with that, I would certainly look forward to working with council to do that. I think it's important, and not just to be able to get the land that we can purchase the right of way, but also that it can be purchased at an affordable amount. I know sometimes it becomes somewhat cost prohibitive what people want to purchase it at. One of the other priorities that when I met with the councillors that we had a chance to talk about was whether or not there might be a chance to look at upgrading and doing some work at the library area out in Mount Uniac, which is something I'd like to see. I do know that the municipality has about 7 acres there next to the elementary school. And if there was an opportunity for the province to bring some funding to that, it would be something I'd like to work towards as well. So, my current office, it's in the same location it was previously, which is in Middle Sackville. I'm looking at putting a satellite office probably into Mount Uniac. A friend of mine has the storage unit place there, so I'm actually looking at maybe renting a small spot off of him. I would say for the municipality, I do think that with the current government, I do think there is a good opportunity for this council. The Premier does recognize the importance of non-HRM ridings, and you know, totally politically, but we don't do very well in HRM. We do very well in the outskirts and other places of the province, and I think that the Premier would be really willing to want to work with municipalities, especially rural municipalities, to try to push some items. So if anybody would like to contact me, go out for a coffee or anything else, I'm certainly open to that at just about any time I could fit you in. And anybody would like to write my number down, I'll give you my personal cell phone number so you can contact me directly. It's 902-476-1234. And that's what happens when you're around for 22 years. You get to pick that number when it first came out 20 years ago. So And I certainly look forward to working with council and councillors, and anything I could do, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So now we're going to move to the next portion, which will be kind of going through a bit of what the strategic plan was. So I'm going to turn it over to the CAO, and she'll lead us through there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to welcome the MLAs and MP today. It's great that we've able to come together and do this for the, sort of few folks as new MLAs or returning, and with the new council just a year in. We've just finished doing our strategic plan for 2021 to 2024. So it's a great time for the two groups three groups of government to be getting together. So we do have 4 key strategies in our plan, and what I was going to do today was just hit the highlights of each of those key strategies of where provincial and federal priorities sort of touch on to municipal priorities. You all have had this, so I guess I'm not going to read it word for word. I'm going to try and stay fairly high level. So one of our key priorities is economic prosperity, and this is something that our council has been very strong on over the last probably 20 to 30 years. And really, it is the key to the growth and success of our municipality. And, to hear you folks talking 20, 30 years out is encouraging, because that is where our strategic plan is going. So in the next 4 years, we will be doing a tremendous amount of planning for that 2050 East Hants, 2060 East Hants scenarios. And really, the growth that you're seeing today in East Hants was enabled because the Council of 1998 sat down and did the planning for 2020. So all of those, the infrastructure charges we have in place, the policies and bylaws that we have in place to manage our growth, all of that was done by a council in 1998. And that's really how we are able to see the tremendous amount of growth that we're seeing today without crippling us financially or economically. So as far as economic development goes, one of the key things that is talked about quite a bit around the table at the municipal level in East Hants is the ability for us to work with the province on provincial road infrastructure. So it's really, for a municipality like ours, we are not a town, we don't own our roads, nor do we want to. We're quite okay with the province owning the roads, but working collaboratively with the province to ensure that we can still develop on those roads is key. So we have a concept plan for the 214 going through Elmsdale. That will involve Public Works, and we've engaged with staff at the Public Works level to make sure that the province isn't putting unnecessary barriers to growth and development of those properties. So we can still build out Elmsdale to be something that we're proud of as a community without barriers being put up by Public Works on, well, you can't have an entrance here or an exit there, that type of thing. And again, working with Public Works on the planning of development and maintenance of Class J roads. So if we have a sewer, we did this a couple of years ago, they were going to do the 214, we had a sewer project, we moved up our project because we knew that they were going to do that work. So keeping those open lines of communication between the province and the municipality will be key moving forward. Around transit, East Hants has had a few transit reports over the last couple of years. I think that is something that council will eventually go towards. And from a federal and provincial point of view, I think it's important that we keep those lines of communication open. We hear from you folks when there may be funding available. And also, as your new government at the provincial level starts talking about regional transit in the Halifax plan, we need to make sure that East Hants is included in that regional transit plan as you move forward. And I did speak with the minister about that, and he assured me that we would be, but just for you folks at the table, we need to be part of that regional transit plan, because our transit plans tie into the airport, which tie into that regional look. And of course, for economic development, physician recruitment is key. And that is something that our council has invested money into advertising and promotion of physician recruitment for our area. We're working very closely with the physician recruiters. And again, for the, not only the rural area of East Hants, but tourism is certainly an area where we've seen a lot of federal and provincial investment over the last few years, and that has certainly benefited East Hants and the rural area of our community. So under sustainable infrastructure, I think one of the key messages that council would like to pass on to any provincial politician or federal politician is, as you sit at the table making new regulations, new legislation around water, wastewater regulations, environmental regulations, we need to be consulted at the municipal level. Quite often, the impact of regulations that are made at the provincial level without consultation are very costly for municipalities. And although I'm sure provincial politicians who are making those regulations don't understand that necessarily from a technical point of view, quite often we've been burdened with regulations that we see as somewhat overburdening. And very costly as far as when it gets into environmental testing and whatnot. So consultation with municipalities is key. As our infrastructure grows around active transportation, you folks have already mentioned a few areas. The UNIAC Rails to Trails, we have a letter into the previous Minister of Transportation Infrastructure Renewal with the province that we haven't heard back from. And really that's around having the province step in and determine the licensing requirements around that rail line, and then ensuring that the ownership of that rail line transfers through to the province or to the municipalities that the rail goes through. So that our council has supported that issue. We've supported the UNIAC Trail Association with legal costs and in front of the utility review board, and that is key for Mount Uniacke. And we have several key assets around that trail that we'd like to capitalize on if that trail was in municipal ownership. So that could really be a game changer for people. So in that community, for recreation, that is key. And my understanding, it's a fairly simple fix from a provincial point of view. So anything we can do to help you understand that issue better or move that issue along to the powers that be, we would certainly help you do that. The other issue that we have on the plate, I think MP Blois mentioned it, is the DAR line. Preferably, we would see the province purchase that DAR line and turn it over to the community groups who are willing to develop it. I think this municipality would support that, the construction out of the DAR line. Council hasn't officially made that decision yet, but certainly something that we'd be willing to work with both levels of government to move forward. The last one on our sustainability piece for our infrastructure is around extended producer responsibility. I'm not sure what the provincial government's stand is on this issue at the moment, but it's been at the forefront of the NSFM's priority list for a number of years. And it's such a no-brainer that it just needs to get done. So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table for municipalities. And all that we need is provincial support to move that program along. People in Nova Scotia are already paying the fee to have this recycling dealt with by the producers. The only difference is we're not getting the money back from the producers that other provinces are. So we can certainly help you folks understand that in a little bit more detail if you need it. But there's lots of information out there from the NSFM about that issue. I believe 2 or 3 years ago for East Hants, it was $470,000, I think, was the amount that we would get back every year if EPR was in place. So that's game changing. That's sort of 3 or 4 cents on our tax rate. So, and as far as municipalities are concerned, there's no reason why you wouldn't do this. It's a very manageable transition to that program. From a federal point of view, I think we've certainly spoken to MP Blois about stable funding in the past. So we have had our gas tax program in place for a number of years, which has been wonderful. And we need to continue with that. So that current program, which isn't called, it's the Canada Community Building Fund program, expires in 2024. So as soon as we can get word on what that program looks like past 2024, we can continue to plan our infrastructure growth based on that, because we do plan out 5 to 10 years of where our funding is going to come from for infrastructure, and that gas tax has certainly played an incredible role in building out some of the infrastructure that we have here in East Hants, the newer infrastructure. And the other strategic priority that we have under sustainable infrastructure is looking at some green energy infrastructure and making sure that we can participate in those types of programs. So again, federal funding, I assume, will be available, as will provincial funding. And we would just ask if there's anything that you think might be of interest or relevant to East Hants, that we just keep that line of communication open and make sure that we're aware of those issues. There are a few other priorities that I had on the list that I won't go into today, but around water security and whatnot. Those are really ongoing conversations between provincial and municipal government. Around corporate excellence, so our corporate excellence strategy is really our internal function and making sure that we're providing the best level of government that we can provide, the best services that we can provide. Where the provincial government particularly comes into play is through the MGA review, our Municipal Government Act. And when I say we, the Association of Municipal Administrators had a number of volunteer municipal staff, as did the NSFM, had many politicians that were involved in the Municipal Government Act review a few years ago. From my understanding, there are several recommendations that are ready to go. They've been vetted, they've been put through legal, they're all ready to go, and a lot of them are very simple housekeeping recommendations. So the faster we can move things like that along, the better. And of course, the provincial cap assessment program, love it or hate it, it has to be a topic of conversation. So there are several reports that have been done to recommend, from the NSFM's point of view, to phase out the CAP program, to replace it with a application-based program, which is how it started to begin with. There are still folks, and especially now with the housing crisis the way it is, there are still folks who are seeing dramatic and sudden increases in their assessments. So we do need something to protect those folks from rising costs. However, the CAP program, the way it is structured today, is destroying the fabric of taxation at the municipal level in Nova Scotia. So this council has supported the NSFM in looking for a long-term phase out of that. The NSFM's recommendation was over 13 years, the last recommendation that was made. I sat through an all-party committee meetings last year. The now Premier was part of that. So I know he's well-versed on the topic. And again, there are lots of lobby groups for both sides. But if any of you wanted to take a deeper dive into the CAP program, my finance team and I could certainly take you through our presentations we've done to ministers over the years on the impact that's having on a municipality like ours. You can have a duplex in Elmsdale where one side pays $1,300 in taxes and the other side of the exact same home pays $1,900 in taxes. So, and it's only because of when they bought their home. So it's really a fairness and an equity issue, as well as the people that are being most harmed are the folks who are living in the lower valued homes, which is really around your housing crisis and your provincial initiatives around housing. Those are the folks that you're hurting with that CAP program. And we've demonstrated that time and time again for several governments. And around strong community, I think this is probably one where it's the most beneficial to make an impact because this is really where our community folks thrive. And in order to do that, the municipality needs to be able to provide those services and programs to them in a way that best meets our community. So one of the top priorities is making sure that the provincial government in their decision-making doesn't take away the autonomy of municipal governments to provide the services and the programs that work for our community. So an example that I think a lot of municipalities are looking at recently is the decision to enter into the planning discussions around HRM's planning. That may solve that particular problem, but it's a very slippery slope if the province starts to create committees to figure out how local government are going to run their business. So, in that, I think all councils would tell you that if they were sitting here today, that they need to be able to make their own decisions about how their community runs and what's best at the municipal level. We also, over the years, have had many conversations around this council as well as prior councils around cost controls. So, downloading of municipal costs to provincial costs to municipalities is very dangerous for us. The amount of money that gets talked about at the provincial level, in the provincial budget seems fairly small, but when you throw that onto a $25 million municipal budget, some of those numbers can be fairly significant. So making sure that as we move forward through the discussions around housing, that housing is a provincial responsibility and municipalities can help, but we don't have deep pockets to fix the housing problem in Nova Scotia, as an example. And I know over the next few years, there's likely going to be, even the next few months, there's going to be a lot of discussion around how costs are shared, the equalization program, so the community capacity program. And for you folks who represent a rural municipality, what our council would ask is that you pay attention at the provincial level to what is happening specifically to rural municipalities. So the towns have a loud voice around roads. Well, if you can't fix their roads issue by putting it onto rural municipality budgets. So it's a very complex set of calculations and formulas that there's several costs that go back and forth between the province and municipalities. And if all of those get thrown on the table, we need to make sure that rural municipalities are not bearing the brunt of fixing the problem that is apparent for towns around roads and transportation. So I guess on the other side of that is the municipal capacity grant. We at East Hants have not gotten an equalization grant since before I started here, so before 2000, I think is about when it ended. There's, I think, 7 or 8 municipalities who don't get that capacity grant. So for the big news a few weeks ago that the province was doubling the capacity grant, East Hants would get nothing from that big news. So a lot of municipalities were very excited. We were not. It's something that we don't get. And we don't get it partly because of the formula and how we have urban costs, but we're deemed a rural municipality. So it kind of skews the way that we're looked at in that formula. Again, if it's all on the table, which I think it's going to be in the next few months, then let's look at how units like East Hants get funding from the province. We are very fortunate. East Hants is a growing municipality. We have a growing tax base, but we also have a lot of growth pressures financially. So with all that growth comes with millions and millions of dollars worth of infrastructure that need to be put in place for people to be able to live in the communities that we're building. So what I would say as representatives of East Hants at the table is just make sure that whatever's being put in place is working for East Hants as well as other units. Other priorities around this council as we grow, making sure that schools have sufficient capacity quite often we don't get a response from the school board about how they will deal with a new subdivision full of capacity. They just say, yeah, we'll make it happen when the time comes. That doesn't give residents a sense of comfort when we're looking at development agreements and whatnot at the council level. So that is always a high concern. And again, I'm sure all of you have heard that in the community, and this council hasn't really spoken about it much, but around the need for a new high school in East Hants for the Hants East side is what I often hear from residents. And I'm sure all we will say is that's something you should talk to your provincial politicians about. So I'm sure you will hear about that as you go forward. The only other provincial items that we have, again, going back to the ability to make urban type decisions on our roads that are shared with the province. One of the key issues that we battle with, and we just keep writing letters, is crosswalks on the number 2 through our growing community. So I'm sure if you talk to Councillor Garden-Cole, that's probably one of the major questions she gets on a weekly basis is, why can't we get a crosswalk across the number 2? So again, that goes back to that working with municipalities to make sure that those provincial roads, yes, they're throughfares, they're ways to move cars, but they're also part of our community. So we need to be able to build the infrastructure on those roads to help people live on those roads and in the communities that touch them. So the last one for the provincial area would be, we've recently sent a letter to the minister asking that the requirement to zone all areas of Nova Scotia be reconsidered. So there is a letter that I can forward to the 3 provincial MLAs. And really, we've started the process of putting zoning in our rural areas, in our unplanned areas. But this council would very much like for the government to reconsider that request or that requirement. And the last one that I'll touch on is around the policing contract. So East Hants is investing in our police force. Unlike many other municipalities and communities, we're supporting our RCMP. We have committed to add officers over the next few years to the force. The biggest concern for this council is the retroactive payments for the new contract on policing. So that is really, I guess it's a federal issue, but it's also a provincial issue because the province manages that contract. Municipalities had no idea that the increase would be so significant. We did know that there was retroactive coming. We thought 2.5% maybe, not 23%, I think it is in the end. So I'm not sure how we will fund that if we're forced to pay. I really don't. Again, that discussion at the federal level and at the provincial level, yes, it's a lot of money, but the impact it has is sort of not immaterial, but absorbable. At the municipal level, I haven't done the calculations on what it will cost us if we have to pay back to 4 or 5 years at 23%, but we don't have that kind of money to spend. And it would certainly prevent us from investing more in our CMP over the next few years. And really, the need is to invest in our police force for our growing community. So that will be a significant challenge, not only for our council, but for councils across the country that I think needs to be addressed. And of course, East Hants can say that, but the FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, is certainly stating that loud and clear at the federal level, but the more that you folks hear it, the better. And there was one that I didn't mention. We have on the books just after last month's council meeting to start a recreation community plan for Mount Uniacke. So in the Mount Uniacke area, There is needed infrastructure. We'll be determining what that is over the next few years, but some kind of recreation or community facility for that growing community will be needed. In East Hants, we typically do things through area rates. So for example, the Sportsplex in Lance was built by the folks in that area with the tax rate for that area. So the folks in Mount Uniacke will be looking to have an area rate put in place for whatever community facility that they get. And of course, on a small tax base like that, any provincial or federal funding that can come into that community for that purpose would be very beneficial. So that is our certainly not our list of all priorities for the municipality, but the ones that touch on provincial or federal areas of interest. I would offer to all of you that our staff are here to help you understand any of these issues, to help you move any of the issues forward that you need. Certainly just reach out to me at any time, and we'll make ourselves and whatever information we have available to help you work through any of these issues at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Muriel.
Thank you very much. Just on the transit, I just have a series of questions to help me in my advocacy for you guys moving forward. On the transit piece, do you have a sense of when you'd be looking to introduce some type of transit concept or even pilot, I presume?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, right before COVID hit, Council had received a report around doing a pilot project. And then COVID hit, so that was sort of put on the side burner. The motions from council in the past have been around, if there was available funding, if we were able, we would look at transit. So the council hasn't made a firm commitment to transit at this point. I think it may be an opportunistic thing as we move forward.
So there is a rural transit fund. It's $250 million over the next 5 years, and my understanding is the allocation is $50 million per year. But as you would know, that's not a heck of a lot of money. It's a good start, but I would highly encourage this council and obviously through the work of staff to start exploring that. And the sooner that we can come to an idea of what an application might look like, I'm happy to try to work with our requisite minister. It would be under Dominic LeBlanc right now. But we might not want to wait till the back end, because usually, even if it is not allocated till year 4 or 5, those decisions are being made in years 2 and 3 at the most. Mm-hmm. So let's not lose sight on that one, and I'm happy to speak offline about that as well. I hear you on the Main Street concept on the 214. A lot of the bilateral infrastructure ultimately is triggered by the province, but we would be in support of that concept. I can speak to ACOA about if there's any kind of conceptual planning or kind of economic development piece on that, but I hear you. Tourism, I hear you on that on ACOA, and again, I would flag my desire to want to help and support on the 215 particularly. Physician recruitment in our platform, and although details are scarce at this point, there is a commitment to help improve physician recruitment in rural areas in our federal platform. Presumably that's going to be going through the province, but that's something we'll keep an eye on. Do we have a sense on the DAR on what the cost would be? I know you mentioned in the presentation the province to buy. Do you have any estimate on what it might cost at this point?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, not one that I would share in open council at this point.
Fair enough. What else do I have here? On housing, I think, perhaps there's different councils and different municipalities take different view on housing and whether or not it is intricately their role. I certainly respect the fact that this council believes that it's more in the domain of the federal and provincial governments. But I guess I would say there is a lot of federal money out there. And so perhaps through Mr. Woodford or others, if there are developers that are coming that want to leverage that, let's just make sure that we get connected in, because even on financing through development opportunities, there's aspects there that can try to create more affordable units. I understand there's only so much capacity at the municipal budget.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, and I would say the municipality, we fully intend to support housing in that respect. So we've been working with some developers. We got news the other day that one of the developers has 40 units that's been approved as a low-income or subsidized housing in their development. So we will work with developers and encourage that, and we do have a plan to do a housing strategy next year. It just seems like everything's with the new provincial government is sped up, but we certainly understand the need for sort of inclusive zoning and all of those issues. We will support housing in those manners, absolutely. We don't have $5 million to put towards a housing project or that type of thing. So, and any land that we might have in the corridor, for example, has already been sort of spoken for by services that are needed, like fire departments and social services and that type of thing. So,
Just two more quick ones, and then I'll let my colleagues weigh in. On the green energy piece, there are a lot of federal programs through different various departments, whether it be Natural Resources Canada. There is green funding under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Plan, the ICIP. Again, those are provincially controlled and administered, but those federal fundings are available, and perhaps that's something our provincial colleagues can push our infrastructure minister. I guess it would be Miss Maslin. On the retroactive payments, hear you. Certainly, I wasn't at the table negotiating, but I've heard that from other municipalities in Kings Hands about their concern, and that's going to have to be something that's hammered out at the provincial and federal level to help support municipalities. So we hear you on that. Last question: do we have, and perhaps it's not appropriate on record, but do we have a sense of the general amounts of the gas tax funding in Mount Uniacke to support that recreational development, or no? Or maybe it's a number I can get later.
yeah, I think Mount Uniacke has done well, through you, Mr. Chairman, over the last few years, sort of setting money aside for some kind of community infrastructure. I think there's about $1 million there, getting close to $1 million.
Yep.
And again, depending on the size of whatever it becomes,
Yeah. No,
that
that's
might
helpful.
be, it's, as a community, the two Mount Uniacke councillors have been planning for something.
Yeah.
We're just not sure what the need is, and we want to make sure we get it right.
No, absolutely. That just helps me as a framing exercise. Thank you.
Thank you very much again, Mr. Chair, through you to CAO. I'm curious whether or not you've had an opportunity to meet with the new Minister for Municipalities.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we're meeting with the minister on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay. All right. So I would, just for council's sake, I would, having had 16 years experience on HRM, I certainly recognize the importance of all elected officials at all levels of government, and I've expressed that numerous times to the Premier and the Minister as well, and have consulted with the Minister around some of the challenges of the planning and some things that they've done recently. I was quite surprised I didn't end up with that portfolio versus the Justice portfolio, but I understand why. So I would comment on your comments in regards to policing costs. It's not unique. I think the province, as well as all municipalities that rely on RCMP, were quite caught off guard by the 20, I was told 25%, but 23, 25%. It's something that the province recognizes, and we recognize that it's cost prohibitive burden to a lot of municipalities that are relying on that policing. What I would suggest is that that contract for provincial policing comes up in 2032. There will have to be, similar to the last time prior to it being entered into, there will have to be some kind of a review of policing done. I anticipate that will happen. There are a number of other things that are currently Desmond Inquiry and Portapic and a few other things that need to conclude before any recommendations to do a policing study are done. But I would anticipate that will certainly have to happen before the 2032 renewal. I'm glad to see that, and I think, you know, having this dialogue is very important. I recognize that most of the things that residents see happen at a municipal level, and the services that most residents rely on and see every day, municipal. I think it's important to continue the dialogue that we've started here today. I recognize that it's probably prohibitive for MLAs to meet on an ongoing basis with the entire council, but you know, at least once a year, I think there's probably merits with that, and I would hope that either through the warden and the CAO, there might be an opportunity to have more frequent updates on that. I would certainly appreciate having the opportunity to sit down with the CAO directly and have some further consultations and dialogue. I do have a pretty good rapport with HRM, CAO, and the mayor there, so it would be beneficial to have that same rapport here. You know, I recognize that East Hants, the growth that's happened in the last couple of years. My daughter, I drive up here every Tuesday and Thursday to bring her to soccer. So I've been able to see the growth over the last 10 years here. And given the tax rate growth and the restrictions in HRM, it only makes sense that areas like Elmsdale, Enfield, Mount Uniacke are going to continue to grow. So I will look into the EPR that you mentioned about and have a discussion with the minister to see how easy that is to do. And I'll also touch with Minister Maslin in regards to the Rails to Trails thing. Once again, as I said previously, I do think that it's probably cost prohibitive for municipalities to look at trying to buy that. I was somewhat disappointed in what the UARB came out with that. Was not aware of the new high school, so I do appreciate that. I have a meeting with education minister to have a discussion around some schools in the Sackville area, and I'll raise that at that time so that she's aware that there's a desire for that. And what else? Sorry. As previously said, I have talked with Councillor Musa and Perry in regards to a recreational facility in Mount Uniacke. I did construct one in Beaverbank. The Beaverbank Community Center and Fire Hall was about a $7 million build, but we did that via an area rate. I recognize that when the province comes to the table with some funding, that those things happen. And so I am agreeable to trying to push for that with my colleagues. And I think that was it. So I certainly thank everybody again and pass it on to my colleagues.
I think John had his hand up for questions, so,
You can go ahead, that's what I asked
Okay.
Chair to do. We did exactly.
okay. I'm just going to reiterate all of the things that they said. These are all ideas and reasons why I wanted to run in this election, so that we could get some of this infrastructure in place for our rural Nova Scotia. Sometimes we're missed, these municipalities, and we have a very loud voice at our PC caucus table because of the fact that the majority of us are in rural Nova Scotia. So we really want to advocate on the transit issues, what we can do, the rails to trails. Again, I do have a meeting and letter drafted. We are all on the same page with that. I know that the West Hants municipality is as well. They had looked into leasing it, and you guys as well probably found out that was not practical. So if anything the province and federally can do to help get that going is where I'm focusing my energy. And again, that group in my riding is a small group, but I want to make sure that I can take back and actually maybe get pointed to the counselor in that area. That's you? Yeah, I was going to say, because I think he reached out to me, but I wasn't sure. So that we can just kind of discuss, or maybe go have a meeting with them so that they can feel that they're valued and they're not going to miss out on some of these new opportunities that are coming.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not gonna rehash most of the stuff that's been said. I would submit, though, the letter that was sent off to the previous minister, you might wanna just redraft it and send it just off to the current minister. I think, my MLAs on the left would agree, just in case it's sitting on somebody's desk. That'll at least give some advance notice to Minister Maslin. In regards to EPR, that is going to be part of I think it's the spring when we roll out the rest of the environment. That's definitely, the minister said that. I haven't, just so some people know, I didn't mention, Minister Johns and me actually went to school together. We've known each other for a lot of years, and the minister was given the list of both high schools in East Hants that they need to do a visit for because of both of them. So that been submitted to her. It's great that Minister Johns will be talking to her. And just, I read all this stuff through. The council knows my view is the cap is, it needs to get looked at, but understand it's a huge change to get it back and to get it off. Although I've publicly said before I was elected, how it was originally designed was correct, and it's not designed properly now. Also in this that the CO didn't comment on, but I figured the property tax and deed transfer proposals, the municipalities are not going to be collecting them or be part of it. It's going to be done outside. When this came up, I brought it to the minister and asked him about it, and this is not for immigration if somebody's moving here. But if somebody in Ontario wants to buy a house here, they will pay this. If they've moved here and they're living in Nova Scotia, they will not be paying it. So doctor recruitment, immigrants, they are not getting this 5% or the $2. And I was assured that none of that burden would be put on the municipalities. It'll be collected at sale, direct to the province, and the other one, direct to the province. So, and regarding Councillor Garden Cole, I've got a letter that I've just got to get out regarding, I want a formal reason why it got denied again, as opposed to just a no. So just so you realize, I found out that it was no, but it never came in writing to explain why. So I've got a letter going off that should go off today now that the House is not sitting. And I'll make sure to copy the warden and the CAO onto it to understand why was the no and where can the yes be versus just the no, which I find a little different because at least when I sat around this, we always had a no, but then we said, however, if you do this, and that never seems to happen. So I'm asking, why no? And by the way, what would it take to get a yes? And again, I'll make sure the warden and CEO are copied and I'll let all councillors know. Thanks.
Thank you. We're now going to open the floor for councillors to ask any questions that they have. And the first one on the list is actually the warden.
Thank you. I've learned to push that button early. Very good discussion. Really looking forward to the relationships that we are going to be able to develop going forward. One thing I just want to touch on, and I think I can safely say that I'm speaking for the three most rural councillors on this municipality, and that is just to reinforce our dismay at having been, with the stroke of a pen, having had the autonomy of our municipality in deciding manners of a planning and zoning nature taken away from us. This was done without adequate consultation with municipalities, little to no consultation. The cost, monetary cost to rural municipalities to implement planning and zoning is enormous. The cost in staff time, taking them away from other duties, is enormous. I have spoken at NSFM about this. I'm not a defeatist type of person, I guess. Other municipalities certainly share this concern, and I've been told we're anxiously waiting to see what they say. And, but it seems to be an idea that, well, the other last provincial government did it, but we don't really know that this one's going to listen to us. But I don't believe that. We were told once upon a time that we had to put our RCMP station on the outer edge of this municipality to serve the rural part of this municipality. And we were kind of saying, well, you know, I guess that's a done deal. And Councillor Rhino at the time said, no, we don't have to accept this answer. Let's go back and make them tell us why and explain to them why we think it should be somewhere else. And we did. And they listened. And it worked. And so I guess I just really want to say planning, you know, and zoning, that is an area of municipal responsibility. Municipalities have always had the ability to implement land use and land zoning where we felt it needed and appropriate, and we have done it. The rural part of our municipality that's not zoned, it's not completely unzoned. A number of years ago, with the advent of windmills and problems with large wind farms in other areas, came onto our radar. So we did sit down and we did put land use and zoning in place in the entire municipality. It's called the wind overlay zone or something like that, and it applies everywhere. So we have the ability, we have had the will to do it where we saw that it was necessary. And to all of a sudden have been told by the provincial government, you're going to do this, you're going to pay for it, and if you don't do it within a certain amount of time, we'll probably come and do it for you. So we've started. We understand that we are a creature of the province. We've been told, so we have started the process. But there's still a but there. I don't understand why the provincial government. I don't understand what the provincial government sees to gain from this. I don't see the benefit to them. And for those of us who are bearing the extra work and the extra cost, we've always been able to do it at our own pace. And as we saw that the need applied, and in our case, as our residents asked for it. So I just really wanted to reinforce that and say, it was done with a stroke of a pen last time. If you could at the very least put a moratorium on that and do some meaningful consultation with the municipalities as to what it's going to cost and what it's going to mean, we'd really appreciate that. Because guys, this is very clearly in our, and ladies, we're very clearly in our ballpark. And we don't have a good understanding as to why it was done. That's that big rural issue, I think, in East Hants. Regarding the schools, yes, Hants North, my alma mater, hasn't had any real work done in many, many years. I can still go into the school and find my homeroom in the same place it always was, and so forth. And I realize that it's challenging to put new infrastructure in a rural area, which is not growing nearly as fast as the other area, the municipality. But it is growing. We're seeing new folks in our communities, and I'm seeing young families moving in. There was a slight discussion a number of years ago about a new building in Kennecook to replace Hants North, but at that time, they intended it to replace all of the elementary schools in the Hants North region too and move them all to Kennecook. I didn't support that. I have very real concerns of putting now with pre-primary, 4- and 5-year-old children on school buses and busing them from Walton to Kennecook and Center Rawdon to Kennecook, South Rawdon, you know. And I think Councillor Rhino could tell you it was a hit for his community when the Maitland Elementary School had to close. And it would also be a hit for the other rural communities if those elementary schools were to close, because we are starting to see an influx of new people with young families. But the minute bet you tell a family with young children who are thinking of moving to rural Nova Scotia because now they're going to have high-speed internet and they can make it work, as soon as they find out their 5-year-old is going to be on the bus for an hour in the morning and another hour in the afternoon, that's a deal killer right there. It's not going to happen. So do agree that Hants East is certainly due. There is certainly, Hants North is due for something, whether it's a major renovation, replacement, whatever, I don't know, but there are a lot of moving pieces there. So just wanted to touch on that. So everything else that's been said, I mean, it's there will always be lots of discussion points and lots of asks, I'm sure, and we really, just in closing of my comments, appreciate you coming here and listening to us. And like I said, I think we copied everyone on our letter about the zoning. Probably our mistake was in not just copying NSFM and not each individual municipality, because it does affect more than us across this province. And anyway, I'm not saying I'm not saying all zoning is a bad thing, but I'm saying municipalities are the folks with the expertise to figure this out. Let us do our jobs. And I would really appreciate if, I know I've bent John's ear many times about this, and he was certainly aware when he sat at this council. So anyway, that's it for my comments, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Warden. Next on the list is Councillor Eli Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a provincial thing, so Cody, you're safe now. The province have purchased like a big piece of land that stretched from Long Lake all the way to Coxcomb Lake with a beautiful beach, 700-800 acres sitting around. Nobody can get to it. There's no roads to get to it. And it's supposed to be a parkland. Like that came from staff. Thanks staff for letting us know about it. And I like for you guys to push for that land because it's a beautiful piece of land that could be a beautiful park for everybody to use, with a beautiful beach on Coxcomb Lake that nobody can use except the people who have the privilege to have homes on there, because there's no way to get to it. And that's one point. And I have a question for Cody too. Is it true that your government is looking to tax people, put capital gain on people's homes? Or is it a rumor? So I've seen that a lot, and I would like to.
Well, you can help me address this. I'm pretty sure the Prime Minister was quite resolute during the campaign. No, not on primary residences. There are measures around individuals who are buying secondary properties, looking to flip those and then try to sell them commercially, that there could be certain capital gains taxes in those areas, but no, not on primary residence.
Yeah, because if you put it on primary residence, that will stop the sale of any homes. Nobody can downgrade or Thank you.
Councillor Moose, you can help quell those rumors out in Mount Uniacke or wherever you're hearing those for me, will you?
No, it's all over Facebook. Like,
Okay.
It's not in my
You jump in there for me then.
Thank you. Next on the list, Councillor Ian Knockwood.
Thank you. Where to start now? Well, I'd like to thank Cody Boyce for doing a great job with the First Nations and Spaganagity, and I'm pretty sure that John will do a great job also. And the two others, I hope so too. But I've been listening, and we brought all levels of government here. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, we have two other governments that are missing, an important government, the First Nation government and the traditional government of the Mi'kmaq, which is the Grand Council. They play a big role for the Mi'kmaqs in East Hands, Nova Scotia, and Canada. I just think communications and consultations with First Nations and the Grand Council, it starts right at municipality. The lowest government in Canada, we look up. But the First Nations get taken away in the shuffle on a lot of things with the federal and provincial. You know, I like to see like an Aboriginal affairs or municipalities government structured. One person, but I think every community or every municipality that there's concerns of environmental and consultation, what's going on in these municipalities and in counties or whatever, you know. And I think it's important what we do now. Reconciliation, how do we go forward? I think it include everybody in talks. Like we said here and think about, to me, I said, we're not included, you know. Not once I heard First Nations mentioned in anybody, you know. I understand education is very important to everybody, you know. Once we start educating each other, and it'd be great. But it's this, it has to start, and I appreciate you guys showed up. Today, I was thinking about Chief Mike Sack not being present, and we're able to vote in municipality elections, provincial elections, federal elections, so we got to be included. We're voters, actually, and
Councillor Knockwood, I think the warden has the answer to why this group is here and not.
oh, well,
groups.
please, can I finish, though?
Oh,
Yeah,
100%,
yeah,
100%.
because I may forget something, right?
Okay.
You know. You know, there's really no reason to not be here, but that's me. But no, I just think it's great that, you know, the reconciliation and how we're going to go forward with the communities and all that, and see the eye of the Mi'kmaq here in Nova Scotia. You know, we only had the only residential school in Atlantic Canada, and like it's hard for us to like what government did back then. Some people call it genocide. So they go against government. You know, they talked about the First Nations. It's an Indian act. It's an act of Canada, and where the Grand Council is Mi'kmaq based. It's very important because they are the actual treaty holders, and then the government gets hands the authority to mostly chief and councils. It's, you know, there's a division in our communities in that, like down in Windsor, the Causeway. You know, they say it's a treaty right, but you know, fish passage and all that stuff. It's important to these individuals, but it's also important to the municipality of West Hands too, to safe travels in with the Causeway and all that. I think if we can have good discussions with the First Nations, you know, and put everybody at the table, you know, chief and council, the federal, provincial, municipalities, the grassroots people. I think that'd be great if we'd be able to do that, you know, so we have everybody at the table to hear that, you know, with everybody's concerns. But no, I just, and I was going back to what the community of Indianbrook purchased land down in Exon 10. I do recall that there was a plan that maybe a high school can go there also. But I just think communications with all levels of government, including First Nations and the traditional government, if we, you know, we do a land acknowledgement, we do that every day. Does it mean something? To me, it does. But let's go a little bit further. You know, let's include, especially tables like this. You know, it's very important.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Knockwood. The warden will speak, and then I'll pass it over to Member of Parliament Blois. Go ahead, warden.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just don't want anyone to think that East Hants is not interested in relationship building with Sabaganagati. We have been trying since before COVID to have a joint council meeting and get to know one another's concerns. Unfortunately, with COVID, that has not happened. And the last correspondence or discussion we had, it was desired that it would be the preference of the Council of Sabaganagati to meet in person as opposed to via Zoom. And I do absolutely agree that that would certainly be the prepared way that we should meet. And So perhaps we should, as things have loosened up somewhere, we'll continue that dialogue and hope to have that happen, and perhaps can bring some joint concerns forward. And at that time, perhaps when the two councils get together and meet, I certainly don't think anyone on this council would have any objection of any of the MLAs or the MP being present when that happens. I do think it could be valuable. And just in my short term thus far as warden, I've had an opportunity to attend a few things that I might not have attended otherwise. And it's certainly been a learning experience for me as for everyone else. And I guess I just wanted to say no disrespect intended to Councillor Knockwood, and that I'm really hoping that as COVID winds down, we're able to have that joint meeting that we've been planning for some time. And certainly the MLAs and the MP would be welcome, to attend once we have a date set for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you to Councillor Knockwood. Look, I certainly agree about the opportunity for partnership and positive dialogue. One of the things that I'm proud of in the first 2 years was through the Shubenacadie wastewater project. I remember sitting down with the former warden and Warden Smith and CAO Ramsey and Chief Sack to make sure that when that infrastructure investment came, it also included the ability to include the lands that Shubenacadie is seeking to add to addition to reserves near the highway, such that when those lands are developed under the council's guidance, there won't be a requirement necessarily to build an incomplete new wastewater system. And so there was just a very small example of partnership. I know, Councillor Knockwood, you've been quite adamant about trying to help drive positive change around the Shubenacadie Hall grounds, for example. Perhaps you played ball there growing up as well. I know I did. It's a really important public space. I know that has been supported as part of the Community Revitalization Fund by this council, and also I believe by Shubenacadie Council as well. I know that is in the hopper. More to say about that in the days ahead. But also the project that Shubenacadie is leading on the riverfront property. I believe it's owned by the Ballams near the site of the residential school just down the road. I think that, as a member of parliament, is where I want to work perhaps with yourself and with council to focus on how we make that space accessible to the community and also have the educational component. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Of course, through the formal consultation, there is the tripartite process. But I'm happy to lean on you. I'll say in public forum, the extent that I can rely on your leadership through this council, but also into the community, I would certainly appreciate it.
Thanks. No, I'll just reflecting back what Warden said. I'm the only Megamark council member in the municipality of Nova Scotia only, and we have an MP, Jamie Baptiste, in Sydney, who's a good friend of mine also. But I'm quite pleased to be on this council here because we have a good group. We have, being the first Megamark in East Hants, then we have the first lady, Warden, then I think we have an African Nova Scotian who's the first deputy, I do believe. I'm not 100% sure about that, but we have a really good group here, and a few months we've been talking to building a good relationship with Shubenacadie, which is great. We can't, COVID, we hide behind COVID all the time, But right now, I think it could have been simple invite, or even the panel of the elected officials here could have said, okay, we have First Nations in our riding, in reconciliation is very important, and I think that's I don't know if that's one of the key thing to talk to, right? It's I just don't want to be forgotten, especially at the municipality level, because any project goes there, it goes to the province and it goes to the Sagamos, which is chiefs, and sometimes they may not think about a project is not a priority, and so it's gets pushed aside. And when it does happen, the grassroots mothers and grandmothers and people get upset with it because they were not told, maybe because there was something for eels or bass or things like that. It's just unbelievable how they could pass by, Just recently, Alton Gas, it was way back 2007, and then 2013 it came up again, and the protests and all that stuff, and putting brine in the river wasn't very healthy for the river. Just little projects like that is just important to our elders and the grassroots grandmothers. Like, it's unbelievable, communication, if we're able to communicate with the First Nations and the local bands, maybe they can disperse the information to the public on their websites or Facebook pages and all that stuff. But communication, consultation is very important to all levels, right from the municipalities, the First Nations, and the Grand Council. But like I said, communications has to be done, and you got to start, sooner or later, because it'd be chaos again. It's wasting money of people going to court. If a big project costs $100 million and the First Nation wasn't involved, that project probably never happened. And the court costs us, millions and millions of dollars of just wasting money. It's simple to say, okay, what do you think? For example, Chief Sack, they want to put so much brine in a river. I'm pretty sure that he would put it on Facebook and say, what do you guys think? He's pretty good at communication like that. So I just said, just to make sure that everybody's included when these projects go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next to speak is Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. There's a couple of points that's already been talked about. I just want to add a little bit more to it. And the EPR for recycled materials, businesses, when they sell their product, they have to pay for disposal of that. And they put that cost into the consumer price they have to pay. Now, the municipalities have to dispose of that. So the money that the business put in is not getting back to the municipality. So the municipality has to pay to dispose of that. And that's the taxpayers. So the people are paying twice to get rid of this so-called material. And I think that's an important part that people don't understand, that would make a big, big difference in that. The second thing is the DAR rail line. And I just want to emphasize the importance of that. Northern Nova Scotia and southern Nova Scotia, there is no connection between the two. They can't travel back and forth. The only connection is in the Royal area, and East Hants is in the Royal area. We've got an abandoned rail line, which is cost effective, as I'll put it that way. And if that is to open up, the economic prosperity would be huge, because you'll get people from Maine coming across the ferry to Yarmouth, all the way through Nova Scotia, up through New Brunswick and back down to Maine, and vice versa. And believe me, I'm in the off-road industry, and there are people who would do that. I mean, they go to Newfoundland now, drive right around Newfoundland and come back again. We have people going to New Brunswick to off-road, people going to Newfoundland, but nobody's coming to Nova Scotia because there's no way to go. There's too many restrictions put in place. So the economic spin-off from this would be financially important to all municipalities and towns on the western side of Nova Scotia if this trail is to open up. And to go hand in hand with the rail system through Mount Uniacke, this would only enhance that, because that would make people, when they use that, they could go down through to Mount Uniacke and through to Halifax if they could. So, and if anybody has any information or any questions they want in the off-road industry, I'll be more than get in contact with me. I'm quite involved in it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hebb. Go ahead.
Yeah, just really quickly, thank you, Councillor Hebb. Barry Barnett, who's in the association, him and I talk on an ongoing basis, and so it it's certainly a priority that I'm pushing forward with the government provincially. Just to let you know, it's on the radar.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and thank you, and I'm sure you are. I just want to let you know that there's a lot of stuff goes on. Barrie is not relative to all of the small information, which is most definitely important, but Barrie is a big part of the organization, certainly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rhino.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I thank you guys all for coming today. First, I'll start off with Councilor MLA Johns's theory that 3 is better than 1 at the provincial table, and that is yet to be proven. East Hants was severed, and I think it was very unfortunate, and people got confused, especially around election time. But I guess we have to live with what they decided. Wasn't in agreements, but we'll see how it works out. Around transit, I am not in favor of transit. It's not a priority for me. I realize that it may be beneficial to some parts of East Hants, but not to the rural, and I see it as being a cost to the municipality, total municipality, that which some people will not get use for. I'm glad to hear MP Blois talk, that changed there with the gas tax funding around fire departments. But I think, what could come back to a fire department, and I'm going to pick on Maitland for now. We could have bought right beside where I live, a trucking company who ran for a trucking company for years. We could have bought that for a great price, would have served the community well, but because it had to had the post-disaster specifications put on it through the Canadian Building Code, it made it crazy just to go by, because we would have had to tear the place apart and build again. So I think I'd like to have a discussion around, what more funding may be available in that area, because the Maitland Fire Department right now is, can't even buy, they have to get custom trucks built because their haul is so old, they can't buy a used one from the corridor area, a good used one, and it really limits and puts onus on the people out there to create ways of funding. The cap, I don't agree with the CAO on eliminating the cap whatsoever. I think the cap was put in place and it had good justification in doing so. It was put in place to keep the property values were skyrocketing because of foreign owners coming over here and taking it. I do believe it needs to stay in place to protect that. Does it need to be tweaked? Most definitely it needs to be tweaked. There are several issues there that then we can talk about further that we can tweak it. But the general concept of the cap, I think, is perfect, so I do not agree with the CAO on that. Hants North, around the schools. What was not mentioned by the CAO was Hants North Rural High, and our warden has touched on that. There's more schools than just Hants East, and I do recognize that Hants East needs a new school, but so does Hants North, and I don't want that to be lost out there. And what the warden has said, about the school system out there is very relevant. And I'll give you an example. Because there's no school in Maitland right now, I had a person from a family move in from Ontario, had a teenage thing, but because they had to travel an hour to school, they opted not to do that. And while closing that little school in Maitland, it has not been enticing for families with small children to move to that area. And what are around have opted, if I'm going to send them all the way to Kennecott for an hour or 45 minutes to an hour with the different bus routes, I may as well take them to Brookfield. So there's issues around that school system, but Hants North is in need of, whether it's a new concept of schooling or education in that area. I do feel that Hants North is just as important as Hants East. School boards. The elimination of school boards by the previous government, I am of twofold on that. But the one I'm hearing most often is when people have issues, they either call the counselor of the area or whatever, and it just makes it so onerous to try to get to the right person. Well, they have issues around busing, if they have issues around teacher stuff and education in general, they've lost that closeness by taking away that school board representative who was a community member. And it just makes it so hard. And I'd like to, whether it's a full school board again or another concept, I'd be open to that. But I do believe we need a more close representation to the school system. I understand that there's school advisory boards, but there needs to be that closeness and not make it so Halifax, Maitland, or North Shore or McPhee's Corner. It just seems to make it such a broad place in between. DA airline, I'm on the fence on that issue. And why I'm on the fence on that issue is because there's issues around on both sides of the Shubenacadie River on how that land was dispersed once it was abandoned by a rail line. I do recognize there is a lot of prospective financial gains to be made there by that DA airline, but it also, has to take into consideration people who live really closely to that rail line and who have some concerns around if that ever took place going by their home and how it would be policed, but that's another issue. But anyway, those are the issues that I wanted to speak on. And yes, and I'll leave it at that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rano. Next on our list is Councillor Sandra Garden-Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I'm pleased to have you here today, to be able to put faces to the names in the event that I feel the need to reach out to you on behalf of my residents and the municipality. Just a couple of things I wanted to touch on at your level. The high school being one of them, Hants East and Hants North as well. I went to HERH some 40 years ago, and there was issues with the high school at that time. And the thing we have to remember is that we need to get these decisions made and moving on these schools because it takes years to execute, to be talking about it and not making decisions on it when it's going to take years once the decisions are made to fund it and get them built, that's years down the road. So we really need to push on these for the youth coming up through. And the second item is crosswalks in Enfield because it is a community that's becoming very densely populated, and we have to move with that. We have to recognize that. We don't have one crosswalk across the core area in Enfield crossing the number 2. And residents are incredulous about that, and it's really hard for me to not be incredulous as well, to send them in what we felt was a great application and to get denied, and not even, well, how about if you do it this way? So I don't really accept that we're not getting a crosswalk there. If we need to change the location of it to make better sightings or what have you, that's what we need to do. But, they need to work with us to get a crosswalk across there in that densely populated area of businesses and residents as well. And we need to do what we have to do to make that happen. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra, and go ahead.
I'm sorry, so just for clarification, the municipality does have a transportation authority, right? Do you have somebody who's in charge of transportation authority?
We have an infrastructure department, right? And our infrastructure department would correspond from council through council to our infrastructure to Public Works.
Okay.
That's how we send notifications. But a lot of the cases in the municipality which is the same as on the number 2 and the number 1 in Mount Uniacke, they're provincial roads. So anything that needs to be done, i.e. a crosswalk in front of a school, has to be approved by Public Works or in a densely populated area between businesses. And in all cases, all of our efforts to get those approved have come back denied.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to see you all here, and we have this opportunity to converse with you. Not going to take a lot of time, just to reiterate what the warden had said about the zoning. My riding is all rural, currently non-zoned. There's a lot of angst in the riding now due to this fact. I'm sure that John and Cody have both heard this out when they were out around on the doors. It is so. I hope that your voices can be heard and prevail on this, that we can maybe do something on it. And also on the school issues, yes, Hants North is way overdue, albeit I haven't been out of there as long as my relative in the warden's chair, but it's very little change there through the years, very little. And that's all I have to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. MLA McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to the councillor. So, and I meant to I brought that up to the Minister of Municipal Affairs regarding putting that rezoning on hold. I would suggest that when you have the meeting with the minister, you remind him onto it, because my point was with boundary reviews, COVID, and all the stuff going on. At a minimum, it should have been pushed off to the next election year. So I did have that conversation, so I'd suggest you have that. To that point, and that's why I made sure the Minister of Education was aware, Hants East and Hants North. I mentioned those two schools specifically. I will tell you a response I got back from this school, what's it, Education Center, whatever it's called now, was, well, yeah, we just had a report. And I said, yeah, nobody seems to know where it is. So I know that the minister, per the Premier's mandate for all the ministers, is going around to all the different ones. And I made sure that Hants East and Hants North are on the list of schools for her to review and to do a review of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I have to go. I thought we were going to be about an hour today, and I've put off 2 already, but the one that's at 11:15 in Halifax, I have to go to. So I look forward to maybe contacting, if it's okay, the CAO and setting up a meeting there, and any time in the future with council. I'll block off a larger time period. So thank you, and thank you, councillors.
It's not a problem. Seeing where there's nobody else left to speak, I'm going to pass the chair to the warden just to add a few comments, if I could. Okay. Yes, as a councillor from Mount Uniacke, my riding was the one, or my district was the one that got split into 3. And just so everybody's aware, this council fully did not support that decision, and we sent a letter and we spoke out against it, and we went right to committee with that decision that was wrong. And we outlined how every community that was under consideration was given a public meeting in front of the commission, and Mount Uniacke was split, and it never was given that same option. So I look forward to having a chance to meet with you and connecting with those residents. During the last provincial election and even municipal elections, everybody was talking about certain parts of Mount Uniacke becoming HRM and West Hants, and how is it going to affect our taxes and everything else. So I'm glad that the election's over and people are understanding now the difference between provincial and municipal boundaries and federal boundaries as well, which is good. Yes, and of course, to go on with Councillor Garden-Cole, the number 1 is also an issue when it comes to Public Works. You know, they've the inability for residents to know where to go. I'm not saying getting rid of the school boards was a bad idea, but it appears the contact information and who to call to get your answers and get your questions answered is not there anymore. The School Advisory Committee is a group of volunteers, and they do great work. I've met with the one in my local area, and they tend to do a lot of good in our little school. But that link of where parents go, it's now reliant on checking your email, checking a Twitter or something like that to figure out what's happening. Well, there's a large area of my district that until recently did not have access to internet. So those were some challenges. But when decisions were made by the previous government and the previous Department of Education to stop courtesy busing along the number 1, it really impacted a lot of families, because in Mount Uniacke, now there was 2 quarries that were put in, and those quarries create an awful lot of heavy truck traffic, and it's not, I wouldn't want my little one walking on the side of the road a kilometer to school in the wintertime with the amount of truck traffic and overall traffic that's going on, especially where they've been denied on multiple occasions a crosswalk even in front of the school to get from one side of the road to the other. So that's something I hope that everybody can bring to their counterparts, and it's something that we'll raise here. But I want to thank everybody for coming today, and we look forward to having an opportunity to speak more in the future, because Councillor Musa and myself, we each have multiple people that we get to interact with now for our constituents and for all of East Hants. I think it can be, as Councillor Rano said, we'll see, but I think it can be a positive thing that we have a few more voices helping out the residents on the ground here. Thank you. Okay. And seeing where there's nothing else, I will, on behalf of council, I'd like to thank you guys for coming today, and I wish you well. And we look forward to having more discussions in the future. Thank you. All right, council, as our guests depart here, we have gone a little over time, but we're going to try and get through a few of these items before we get to our break. So we're moving directly on to the next one, and it's about the Lebanese Heritage Month, request to reg the flag, and the CAO will take this.
No, the wind? I'll do that after break.
We'll zip down to this one, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, we have in our strategic, in your new strategic plan, references to, well, your overall strategic plan talks to creating a welcoming community where everyone feels connected. Your overall mission is around that connectivity, and in the past, we actually have a policy that says we don't do proclamations because we get several proclamation requests every month, and we don't have a long council meeting where you could sit and read proclamations. One of the things in the plan over the next few years was to make some changes or recommendations to changes to your flag policy to sort of formalize a schedule of flags that you may want to fly to recognize the diversity of your community. Most recently, Council has decided to fly the Every Child Matters flag in October for the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And along those same lines, we have a request from the public. It was a verbal request that came in to see if the municipality would fly the flag of Lebanon in honor of Lebanese Heritage Month, which is recognized in Nova Scotia during the month of November. So without a formal policy in place, which we do intend to bring to council, that formal policy would include sort of a recommended schedule of flags, probably adding a fourth flagpole to outside of the building. But we're not there yet. We haven't had time to deal with that. So the request is to fly the flag of Lebanon. The recommendation from staff would be that you fly the Lebanon flag, if you choose, for a 3-day period starting on November 22nd to recognize Lebanese Heritage Month, or sort of the day. And sort of, if you approve this, it would be on a one-off, and then to sort of formalize that in a policy at some point. And this would be one of those holidays if council chose to recognize it, not a holiday, a day of recognition, that we would include in that policy. But for now, the request is simply for this November, if you want us to raise the flag for that 3-day period.
Okay, thank you, CAO. Discussion, Councilor Rhino.
Are we aware of other municipalities and their flag policies? I don't have a problem with flying this, but the problem is we can't be a one-off. If we get requests from other cultures or anything else to fly a flag, I think we're obligated to do this. So, I just want to know, it can't be a one-off. I'm saying it right now, if we agree to this, and then somehow down the road, oh, no, we're not going to fly this one, then we're not being fair to all the different cultures around here. So I'm be interested in, do we have any kind of preliminary idea on the flag policies through the municipalities across Nova Scotia?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, not directly with municipalities, but the province does fly the Lebanon flag for the month of November. So that is where you would take your lead on this particular day of recognition.
Well, I guess I'm wondering then.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we would do that sort of jurisdictional scan as part of a formal policy for council. We're not there yet. The problem with putting in a strategic plan is not everything can get done in year one. So that would be part of a formal policy, would be a jurisdictional scan of other municipal units.
Well, I guess, by not having a clear policy on this, I would almost say we really should write back respectfully and say, without a clear policy, we have no directive, but we are going to look into this matter, because somehow if we fly this flag and then nobody agrees on the policy down the road, and then it seems to be unequal. So I would like to see personally a flag policy developed before any further flags are flown at this time. That way we're treating everybody the same without no possibility of change. Thank you.
Councilor Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my understanding is there will be a flag policy developed at some point. That is in the works. It's a strong Lebanese community in East Hants. I would move the recommendation to fly the flag.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. All right. Councilor Knockwood, you were on before the motion, so I'll grant you some leeway. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to support the motion too, but I totally agree that being a Mi'kmaq person who's been here in this territory over 14,000 years and went through many flags, and I made many friends, every nationality, and especially the Lebanese. I learned how to speak a little bit of Arabic to a family's mother came over here, and she had spoke no English, so I took just speak a little bit of Lebanese just to say hello to her, to make her feel welcome, as a Mi'kmaq person. But I agree with Councilor Green, if there's a policy being done, yeah, I totally agree that Lebanese, Nova Scotians, be proud. Yeah, let's be proud of everybody here, There's African Nova Scotians, Scottish, we find all different kinds of places in Nova Scotia, I think East Hants is a very welcome municipality, and I think we should, fly even more flags if we could, I just totally agree with Councilor Green over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. To the motion, Councilor Rhino.
Yes, I will support the motion, but my reservation is there is no flag policy, and that if anything comes up, any flag request to fly in between this time and a flag policy being created, that we give this equal opportunity to fly that flag as well. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one left to speak.
Question.
Question's been called. Question's called. We'll go to the vote. All the votes are in, and it's passed unanimously. Okay, so we're gonna do. Yep. We're gonna move both. So we're gonna do a slight adjustment to the agenda because we have a representative here from item 17. So at the end of the day, we'll reconvene corporate residential services to address items 15 and 16 on your agenda, the council 22 calendar, and alternative procurement. So the next thing we're gonna move to on the agenda is proposed Red Spruce Wind Energy Project presentation. We have Jason Paris from SWB Development Limited here. Come on down and take a seat. Oh, Councilor Mitchell?
Is there a possibility of having a short break?
The short break is scheduled for after this presentation.
Right after this? Okay, thank you.
On behalf of council, welcome.
Oh, perfect. Great, thanks everyone. Appreciate your time this morning. I'll try to make this quick so that folks can get to the break. But my name's Jason Parise, and I'm a development manager with SWEB Development based out of Halifax. I've been with the company for a little over 7 years now. Thought I would come in today to give you a very early overview of a project that we're proposing in East Hants, and some information about an upcoming procurement here in Nova Scotia for new renewable energy, and as well shed a bit of light on how we select wind and solar energy project sites, and then address kind of some administrative stuff here at the end in terms of contacts and so forth with the municipality as well as myself. So who's SWEB Development? We are a renewable energy developer and operator, so we essentially greenfield wind and solar energy projects in Eastern Canada and the Northeast US. We have a parent company based out of Austria, and it's 100% citizen-owned by over 4,400 local investors, which makes it the largest citizen-owned renewable energy company in Austria. We've been in operation for over 25 years and have done a lot of partnership development here in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Maine, with First Nation communities, local entities, and local community members kind of across those different jurisdictions. In North America, we have two main offices. One's in Halifax, one's in Boston. We've been out of the Halifax office for a little over 10 years now, and have been present in Nova Scotia and have built some projects here in the past, a couple of which are currently located here in East Hants as well. Just a quick company overview. So I would call us a medium-scale renewable energy company. Up in the top left, you'll see we have about 523 megawatts of installed capacity. That's roughly what's installed here in Nova Scotia. Currently, there's about 616 megawatts of installed wind here in the province. So we generate enough power for a little over 840,000 people. A bit of financial info here. And then our office locations are included as well. So active in 8 countries and 2 continents. Our focus with wind and solar development has always been local partnership development and local benefits during the development and construction phase. with wind and solar, there are not a lot of benefits during the operational phase related to construction or things like that, but the benefits that we have continue on throughout the operational period. So just here on the list is a handful of the different community associations and groups that we've developed operational period benefits for. So each of these community groups receives a percentage of the project revenue over the 20-year operational phase, and that's distributed by a committee in each of those community areas. So in the Maritime provinces, we've been active here since 2010. We built about 40 megawatts of small-scale wind projects throughout the province. And you'll see in the small area up near the Fundy coast of New Brunswick, that was our first successful First Nation partnership with Woodstock First Nation. That was 18 megawatt project, 5 turbines, all at 3.6 megawatts each. And then since then, we've continued developing projects across Eastern Canada and the Northeast US with a big focus on continuing with First Nation engagement and partnership development, as well as municipal and local community partnerships as well. The benefits with Woodstock First Nation, we created bursary programs for new graduates to assist with university and college education, and also are in the process of developing a solar PV install for one of the buildings in that community. So a lot of shared learning on that front, and a lot of exciting things to come down the road. So currently, and I'm not sure how much council and other folks from the community are aware, but the provincial government is pushing for 80% renewable energy by 2030. So as part of that, as with any jurisdiction, what we'll see is a series of procurements that'll bring on more wind and more solar. So I won't focus on the Green Choice program. That is to follow next year, but the kind of current opportunity is what's called the rate-based program. It was announced by Ian Rankin back in the summer. The second draft of the RFP for this procurement is being released tomorrow, which will have a ripple effect on the timing, the requirements, the eligibility of projects. But this first round is intended to solicit 350 megawatts of new renewable energy projects. The focus will primarily be on wind, with some of it also being solar, but with the province still having a lot of land-based wind areas available, and the price of wind being so low, that'll be the focus of this procurement. So basically adding another 50% to our current wind energy fleet here in the province. One sort of nice benefit about these new procurements is there is a focus on a much more profound focus on local community benefits, working with municipalities, First Nation communities, and underrepresented communities. So there will be a lot more of the revenue from projects left here in Nova Scotia, which is really exciting for us and I think for those who participate. So why this area? Generally, when we're looking for wind and solar projects, we're looking at areas that are proximal to the grid, strong wind or solar resource, adequate distance from homes and dwellings, low environmental risk or sensitivity is quite important, and then focusing on benefits and capacity building for communities, and also really ensuring that communities welcome these types of projects. We try to avoid areas where communities are not interested in having wind and solar energy projects built. The project that we're proposing here in East Hants is up to 78 megawatts, so roughly 10 to 13 turbines, depending on which turbine we end up with. It's located east of Beaverbank Road, so we're currently doing the relevant assessments with NAV Canada and Transport Canada to ensure there are no hindrances to radar and the airport in this region. Roughly enough power from this project for 26,000 homes, and we're currently in the process. It's very preliminary project concept, but we're in the process of conducting environmental screening for this project to ensure that there are no significant environmental sensitivities. And likely in the spring of next year, we'll pursue a traditional knowledge study for this project site, which is a similar process we did for our other projects here in East Hants. There is a plan to provide a lot of local benefits from this project, monetary and capacity building. We'd like to see community members get involved in the construction phase, and local tendering will be at the forefront of how we do things here, of course. Like all of our other projects, we've seen a lot of indirect and direct benefits that come out of the construction phase. These projects are a lot larger than what's been built here in East Hants, so very likely that we'll see a lot more of those benefits with the scale that we're presenting here. And then this evening, we're planning to hold the first of several community engagement sessions. So just to invite the community, it is early in the project phase, but we want to have the community get involved in scoping the project and provide feedback on the project. So the first session will be held this evening, and we'll provide feedback to the municipality on how that went, and there'll be an engagement report we'll submit as well. And of course, other meetings will be held for the project with the community, but also with First Nation communities in the months to come, and also with other community members, special interest groups that have a vested interest in the land use in that area. In terms of a timeline, which I think is probably important to highlight today, we're in this blue phase of development, so very early stage, land acquisition, site analysis and design. All the engagement is well underway, and we plan to do a fair bit more of it over the next 2 to 3 years and into the construction operation phase, of course. We do have some environmental assessment fieldwork underway as well for this project site, but plan to finalize that in the next year and a half. The construction for this project, if it's awarded a power purchase agreement in this upcoming procurement, excuse me, would technically start sometime in late 2023, if not 2024, and the project would reach commercial operation in late 2024 or late 2025, depending on if it's awarded a contract through the procurement process. So last slide. Just wanted to ensure that in the months to come, we have a direct point of contact with the municipality. I understand that there may be several people from the community here that want to stay informed. For, I guess, ease of information flow, it might be best to have one person from the community be the central point of contact. And I will myself be the contact for our projects across the province. What we look for from the municipality in the next few months is support with our stakeholder engagement. If there are stakeholders that we're not aware of that should be contacted, we'd appreciate input on that front. Help with scoping community benefits. What does the community need here in East Hants as well? If the project's built, we'd like to ensure the benefits are designed in a way that they're unique to the community. And then as well, just guidance on local permitting requirements. We've permitted in this part of the province before, but just looking to ensure that everything we have on file is up to date and subject to a positive community meeting this evening and continued engagement with the community. We'd look for a letter of support from the municipality to help the likelihood of success for the project. So that's everything for today. Again, just wanted to get in front of council early with this project idea. We'll continue to be in touch in the months and years to come should the project be successful in the RFP. And we look for input from folks here.
Thank you so much. We have a couple questions here. Councillor Rana.
Yes, where will that meeting tonight be held?
It's at the UNIAC Fire Hall.
UNIAC?
Yeah, and it's from 4 p.m. till 8 p.m. today.
And if I could get, I looked at your map, whereabouts is that close to? Because it really doesn't focus in for me, unless I'm looking at something wrong, exactly where that's at.
So our North Beaverbank site is located near my cursor. There aren't a lot of side roads here. So this would be sort of near Elmsdale Lumber land area.
I guess road-wise, what, are we on the south road? What road are we on?
So the North Beaverbank Road runs just west of the project site. So pretty much, it's a pretty large expanse of land. We just haven't defined the turbine sites yet.
Okay, no, I'm not
Yeah.
just getting a good feel where exactly that's at, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Just around your community funds, question around that, are they ever moved around in any, thought of moving them around? And I'll explain why later.
Sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like your SWEB contributes funds to the Walton area, Harvard lands, just to in Upper Nine or 9 Mile River Community Hall. Are those specific, those are booked in forever or do they move around? Is there any thought of moving them around or?
Each of these are what we would call community liaison committees that the community elected to handle the funds from the project. Whether or not those funds are moved would be up to those community liaison committees.
So it'd be up to the community later. No,
Yeah.
it's funny because during the campaign there of last year, I had one person on the West Indian Road asked if those funds could be moved around to benefit more communities that were in a specific area to those wind projects. I said I didn't have an answer. I said, my answer right off the cuff was, that's a community in which they're in, but I would ask the question if I had the opportunity. So I guess this is my opportunity.
Of course, no. And I think if there's contact information that we can provide, we'd certainly be happy to. It's really up to the CLC to decide how the funds are distributed. We try to stay out of that sort of process because the intention is to have the community manage the funds in a way that they think is most useful.
Okay. So in the future, I would suggest that when you bring maps such as this, they'd be more localized so people can know exactly where they're going. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're gonna have one of the biggest project that you have around here, right? 34 to 78. I saw most of them are around 18 or 17 or something. So how are you gonna approach and have a meeting at the community if you don't have a location? Like how people are gonna know what's gonna happen if they're near homes? We don't even know anything about the location, so.
Yeah. No, it's a great question. At this early in a project, we don't tend to know where the turbines are going to go. That's one of the reasons why we approach the community is to see if they're, provincial mapping is out of date often, so we don't see, like a camp that might be located in these rural areas. We don't see a new home that might have shown up that impacts the setback approaches or considerations we have. The reason why we do environmental assessment field work up front is there are wetlands that don't show up in the provincial mapping. There are bird species that don't show up in the provincial database that we ground verify that informs where these turbines go. So we've been doing this for 25 years. There's a lot that we learned from engaging communities early. Publishing turbine sites without having for example, if we publish a turbine site and a community member shows up to the meeting tonight and identifies a camp that's near a turbine that we weren't aware of, it looks like we haven't done our due diligence with the community. So we try to talk to the community first. The other thing is the type of turbine impacts how far apart turbines have to be spaced from each other. Impacts the capacity of each turbine. So if the turbines are higher capacity, we have fewer turbines. That means we have a different layout. At this early, any developer who's developing a wind farm in Nova Scotia is probably looking at several different turbine types because the cost of those turbines can change dramatically over a 3-year period. So the type of turbine that we end up with 3 years out from now could be in the range of 4.5 to 6 megawatts each, and that'll impact the layout. So rather than publishing a layout every 3 months until the project's built, we try to publish a layout that we think is actually feasible once we have more information. So the intention is to have more information from the community to help inform project design along with those other factors. I hope that helps.
It kind of helped, but I'm still like, how people gonna give you their opinion if they don't know which home's gonna, like, if it's gonna impact their home or it's gonna impact the whole area. I know it's a big project, and I know Mount Uniacke is hard to deal with, so.
Yeah, it's very early, and this is the first of several meetings that we'll have with the community. So I would expect sometime early spring next year, we'll have a more defined layout to share with the community. Once we understand what turbines that we are comfortable putting on the site. Turbines are designed for certain wind types as well, so that'll impact things for us and other developers as well. So there will be at least 2 public meetings next year after the Christmas holiday that will have more information about the layout and more information about what's been collected in the field from the environmental assessment process as well. So the community should have several opportunities to see potential layout for the project.
Yeah, I have one more question. So those project wouldn't be beneficial for everybody to have them like on a crown land where, you know, there's no development's gonna come near them or anything? Is there any way you could do something with the, like, I know there's thousands and thousands of acres in Mount Uniacke crown land, and you don't have the risk of a subdivision going near those projects. And I know it's growing, like Mount Uniacke is growing. So this way, and Beaverbank is coming through the same way. So at the end, they're gonna be very close to those developments. So I don't know. It's kind of early. I like to hear more. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah, and on the Crown Land piece, the Crown Land Department's currently developing a strategy for wind and solar projects that we've not yet been privy to. And it's also important to note that a lot of Crown land is currently being slated for protection in the province that impacts where we can put wind energy projects, some of which is new to us around our North Beaverbank site. There's new Crown land being protected there. So yes, there's Crown land available. Whether or not it's the right type of land to build a new wind project on is another important question. And there are a lot of forestry companies in the province that are pretty keen to do wind projects because it's diversifies their revenue source and helps to put projects up, which is great.
Councillor Knockwood.
Thank you. I'm all set yet? Good to go?
Good to go.
Okay, thank you. For the last 20-some odd years, I've been listening to a bunch of green energy and all that. You know, I like it, you know, it's a good source, but no, the project on the Blois Road, is that you guys' project? Behind Indian Brooks First Nations? There's 3 turbines.
Harwood Lands, yeah.
Yeah, that's you
Yeah.
guys?
I didn't work on that project site, but that is our site.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you talk about engaging First Nation communities. How are you going to do that? Do you do that to the provincial with the chiefs or local communities like Indian Brook, Member 2,
Yeah.
Malbrook, or do you just go to the province and talk to the chiefs?
I'll speak for myself. I've been responsible for our First Nation partnerships in Ontario, New Brunswick, and here. I've learned a lot from that process. And so last year I started sending letters out to each community and then telephoned and left messages. And this spring I hand-delivered letters to each community in Nova Scotia, each First Nation community, and also sent emails and have kept track of that engagement and plan to continue doing so. Alongside that, I guess a different conduit I've taken is to engage the provincial government and their First Nation department to ensure that, you know, up-to-date contact information is in hand. The right channels are being kind of run through for communication with different communities here in the province as well. So sort of working from both spheres there.
So I know you mentioned about traditional land use. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
For the Harvard Lands project we did, traditional knowledge study was conducted, and we did something similar in New Brunswick to inform the environmental impact assessment. So we had in New Brunswick, it was members from Fort Folly First Nation that went to site with our environmental assessment practitioners and identified traditional plants and the traditional use of that area, hunting and things like that, and provided their input on if there was going to be any impact to the traditional use in that area. So that's what we've done, but we would welcome input from the various First Nation communities around each of our project sites to help inform that process.
Because I was wondering, you said Woodstock First Nation, and it's just basically, it's in Fort Folly area territory. Yeah, I know, I was just looking at, maybe you got mixed up there, but.
Of course.
I have another concern too, airports. I know we have lands on Grand Lake, we had a tower there. How far is that to the airport? Would it affect anything with the airport with the lights and all that stuff? What kind of studies would you do on that for safety?
We have to engage NAV Canada and Transport Canada, Department of National Defence, the RCMP, Environment Canada, Environment and Climate Change Canada as well. With every time we publish a new layout for the project, we submit that to those various federal departments, and they assess whether there'll be an impact on radar communication, flight paths, things like that. And sometimes they reject a project if it will have a negative impact on an airport or a radar system as well. Yeah, so those are currently being reviewed by those different departments for this project site.
Okay, that's all. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you. Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some questions that was raised around the community dividend funds. There is a committee set up for the 9 Mile River towers and a committee set up for the Harvard Land towers. And I am the chairperson of both those committees. And 9 Mile River received approximately $19,000 a year from this project, and Harvard Land receives community about $6,000 a year, and Spaghetti from the same tower gets about $17,000 a year. And it's up to the committees to decide how and where the money is to be spent. And if any counselor wants any information on how we set ours up, I'd be more than happy to talk with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hebb.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing nothing else, we're gonna now move into camera to discuss a contractual issue. So if we can shut things down and move into camera. Oh yes, thank you for coming out today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
And any staff that's required can stay, any staff that's not required can go. And Mr. Tingley, you can stay as well. Oh, sorry, we need a motion to go into camera. Can I have a motion to move into camera?
Staff Sergeant Bushel is aware we're running late, he's fine with that.
I guess the question for me is, do we need to go in camera at this time? Cannot we do this at the end of the day?
No, we cannot. It has to be right now.
Okay, fine.
So look for a motion. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Looks like we're getting fired back up here. Just give me the thumbs up when we're good to go, Shirley. We're gonna go right into the RCP, right? Yeah. I'll adjourn this and, yeah. Are we good to go? Waiting for Shirley. She's over there. We're good. Thank you. Just a report, we met in camera for a contractual issue, and from that, staff has had direction of how we're going to proceed. So for the remainder of corporate and residential services, we're going to move it to the end of the day. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn corporate residential services and convene into Police Advisory Committee. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. There.
I'd like to call this portion of the executive committee, of the executive committee, the police advisory committee to order. I welcome everyone here. I can't apologize for being late. That's the order of the business that we're in, and has to be what it has to be. First order of business, approval of the minutes of September 21st, 2021. What is your wish? All those in favor? Aye. Contrary of mine, motion's carried. Next order of business is I would like to report on the resignation due to health issues of Mr. Reuben Hatt. I want to bring that up, and I would entertain a motion for someone to write a letter and thank Mr. Hatt for his involvement in the Police Advisory Committee. Moved by Councillor Knockwood, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Go to the vote. Votes are in and it's passed unanimously. I must report we had regrets from public member Greg Densmore, cannot make the meeting today. Next order of business would be a welcome to our newest member, Crystal Randall, to the Police Advisory Committee, and welcome. At this time, I would ask you to stand, read the oath in front of you, and then we'll sign it and have it adopted.
Swear or affirm that I will faithfully, diligently, and impartially execute and perform the duties required of me as a member of the East Hants Police Advisory Committee. And while I continue to hold office, I will, to the best of my judgment, skill, knowledge, and ability, carry out, discharge, and perform all the duties of my office faithfully, impartially, and according to the Police Act or any other act and to any regulation, rule, or bylaw. and will not, except in the discharge of my duties, disclose to any person any matter or evidence brought before the East Hants Police Advisory Committee. So help me God, I so swear affirm.
Thank you, Ms. Randall. Shirley, I would ask that, as a commissioner of oaths, that you would witness that, please, and then it will be official. Thank you, Shirley. Next order of business would be RCMP quarterly report, Staff Sergeant Bushel. It's your thing, take it away. Where are you at? You're at number 2.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our newest member. I'm here today with Sergeant Martin Roy again to bring you our update. So our agenda is as follows: a quick HR update, operations update, calls for service since our last meeting, and then a period for thoughts and questions. So we haven't changed much in our size since we last discussed. 30 employees, 26 police officers, 4 detachment assistants. No change in our shortages. We have 6 off. 2 are due to illness, 2 secondments, 1 paternity, and 1 still awaiting transfer in. As we've also always discussed, any shortfalls are covered off with overtime as required. That is not at an additional expense to the municipality. I'm really pleased to say that our PSE in Rawdon has received her indeterminate status. It was a term position that she accepted, but we were able to transition that to indeterminate. So we're pleased to share that with you today. Our new cadet, William McNutt, is in training right now. He's at depot. He'll be finishing up in December, and we hope to see him December 31st. He'll be backfilling an anticipated transfer out. 1 DSA from the Enfield detachment has left for a new opportunity. We are in the process of hiring another. So that process is underway. And our 2 new public servant positions are still in process as well. Our new corporal supervisor, Jared Ryan, starts December 1st. And I'm also pleased to note that we have a new auxiliary member. His name is Nathan Joyce. He's just been passed the security clearance. He's interested in joining the RCMP. He's currently works with the operations center out of Halifax, the OCC we call it. It's our dispatch, and he'll be doing volunteer auxiliary duties with our members. You may be familiar with the auxiliary program in the past. You'd see volunteer members from the community in the auxiliary capacity, dressed in uniform, out with our regular members, doing regular frontline duties. The program has changed significantly since that time. They no longer occupy positions where they'll be out in the public in uniform assisting members on calls for service. The auxiliary program is more administrative in nature, and their duties are more or less restricted to administration or support type duties, which aren't frontline or putting them in peril like a normal police officer. So we hope to utilize Nathan. He's got some skill sets, but we hope to utilize him within the office to support our operations. Operations are slowing for the fall. That's a normal thing. That always happens this type of year. I'm pleased to also say COVID has not hindered our operations this quarter at all. We're continuing with our hot spot policing with success. And when we flip to the next page, you'll see the calls for service are down across the board, with the exception of our sexual assault files. There was a particular file that we had this fall where multiple charges were laid. It is a bit of an anomaly, so when you see that that's one that took a spike, it's in respect to one particular investigation. Our community policing position is making strides. So Terry Fogarty he's back in full duties and has been working very hard. He's revitalized our East Hants Crime Prevention Group. They're planning a float in the upcoming Christmas parade. They're starting up a seniors academy that's going to be in March, and it's basically several weeks of activities where local seniors will come and engage in various crime prevention types of initiatives, some fun, some educational, some just getting out and building those relationships with the community. And if that works well locally, then we may take it on the road and to different parts of the municipality. The East Hants Citizens on Patrol is ready for duty, and they're taking hotspots as we give those to our officers, so they're out there and looking at those areas as well. Proactive intelligence gathering is continuing as we've discussed in the past through our community policing program. We also are planning a Stuffer Cruiser drive on November 27th. That's a Saturday, and that'll be at the Sobeys. So you'll see us there. And lastly, plans are underway for a memorial golf tournament in the spring. Of course, that's in memory of Heidi Stevenson. I'm not sure, but I believe it's going to be, and forgive me, the name is escaping me, but the one, Penn Hills? Yeah, Penn.
I would remind everybody that they have to go to the chair, please, and please use this.
Thank you. Lastly, I just wanted to update you. We reported last time we were going to be starting a new shift schedule with a supervisor dedicated to each shift. There's some on your slide. You'll see the types of things that we were looking to achieve on through that new shift schedule. And I'm pleased to say so far it's working wonderfully. The members are giving us some real positive feedback. The overlap is enabling them, the members who were working during the day shift to get things written up. The night shift takes over and gives them about an hour of respite so that they can clean up their files. It's improved the work-life balance for the members and has improved our ability to get out and do proactive work a little better during the shift. So we're real happy with the initial feedback.
Corey, if I might interrupt, I wonder if you could move your mic a little closer there.
Oh,
Good.
forgive me, Chair, is that...
That's a little better.
If you need me to speak on anything again, I'd be happy to.
No, carry on.
Forgive me. So I'll close with our calls for service and let you take a look at that. They're broken down again by quarter and then the 3-year average for this quarter. Again, you'll see that calls for service across the board are down, the exception being the sexual assaults. And I spoke to the reason for that.
Anything further? Any questions around with the report? I'll have first up Councillor Norval Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to Staff Sergeant.
Excuse me, Deputy Warden. Excuse me.
That's okay. Through you to Staff Sergeant. So they a municipal expense or somebody else cover those when they're off?
For the secondment?
Yes.
Secondments, it can depend. Well, I'll say no, it's not an additional expense. Under the PPSA, the municipality pays a per diem for the number of members that we have on strength, and that's all you pay. Those secondments are balanced back and forth behind the scenes. Sometimes we may JV journal voucher costs from unit to unit, but you'll never see them. Internally, we do recover costs when members are transferred from one unit to another for things like uniforms or their salary for the portion of the year that they were working here versus working there. Those things are definitely ironed out, but they aren't reflected on your yearly invoices.
And the second part is the illness, is that, do you think they'll be back, those ones, the 6 that are off? They were off, I think, last quarter, or we had illness last quarter too?
So we have 6 off in total, but there's a variety. 2 are due to illness. One mat, a couple of comments. But that, again, it doesn't change your per diem rate that you pay per member. It's part of, I guess, that give and take. We sometimes get members seconded to us as well. And, that's a win for us. Like, for example, over the last year, Reserve Constable Kerr has worked with us quite a bit. He's paid a full constable salary, and over and above what the normal, our normal constables, and none of that is borne. None of those expenses are borne by the municipality, despite him being on strength.
Is this increasing your overtime or no?
Anytime we have someone assisting us, it helps to mitigate the overtime and decrease it. But yes, with any shortfall, it runs the risk of overtime. However, with the new schedule, we're seeing a little bit less overtime because each shift has that dedicated supervisor who's able to risk assess in the moment. Is this going to be anticipate whether it's going to be a busy night, whether overtime is required or not. When we don't have that supervisory oversight, we tend to just run with minimum numbers, i.e. we're always going to have a minimum of 4 or something like that. But with the supervisor working, they can risk assess. It's a Monday night, it's very quiet. Maybe we can stay at 3 tonight and we'll be good. And because that person is empowered with the authority that if things do get busy, they can make a call and get a member into a system if need be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, that's all. Thank you, Staff Sec.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. Councillor Michael Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the Staff Sergeant. It's great to see the calls for service go down. I know that you guys implemented some different procedures and some different patrolling schedules and different things in the last few quarters. Have you noticed that with the decrease in calls for service that there are, is it across the board in all areas, or are there still some hotspots, and are there new hotspots that have popped up in relation to this?
I'll speak to it and I'll ask Martin to jump in if he wishes. I think we're still seeing some of the same areas with increased levels of activity. Mount Uniacke seems to be a busy spot for vandalism, for break and enters, for those types of things in the industrial park area, for example. But when we're dealing with impaired drivers or the bulk of the calls for service through the corridor, that seemed, infield through Lance onto Shubenacadie, that's always busier. But all in all, it seems like it's just consistent with how it has been. Nothing, no major things that are popping out in my mind.
Oh, great. No, it's great news. I just was seeing, I know you guys had shifted some tactics, and I wanted to see if they were shifting to match, and there was different areas coming up. But no, it's great. Thank you very much for everything you guys do.
No, thank you. And like I say, we have been stepping up in a couple of areas, and we've decreased perhaps our more minor calls for service in those areas as a result. But we still have some, some things that are causing us concern. Like I say, the break and enters and those types of things into the industrial areas. That's been a bit of a tough one.
That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no one further have any questions with regard to the report. I'd just like to report I attended the Nova Scotia Police Governance Association meeting last week in Truro. We had presentations from Holly Critchan, and I will be going and telling everybody a little bit of that a little further in Business from Councillors next week at council session. That really brings us to the end of our Police Advisory Committee, and I'm going on the record. I'm saying that I'm not in favor of this rushed committee form today, and this is not the first time it's happened, so we'll try to make a better system or a longer venue for time in the future. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn and to head for lunch to return at approximately 1:30. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Contrary of mind? Motion carried.